Where's Waldo? Half-hour pre-event banter. It's a bold move. Cotton. Let's see how it plays out, and while we wait. Oh hi KBP. Booyah. Winner Chissen dinner. Love me some Chissen. Eat it. Vance being weird and Walz mackin' dad jokes.
Oh, hi. Hello. How you doing? My name is Waldo, and I am here to feel the politics with you. How's everybody doing tonight? I am doing great. Thank you. Got my dinner eaten a little bit early, and now I'm here, starting up a bit early tonight, but that's because it's a special occasion. We got two important things going on tonight. First off, we've got the Vance being weird and Walz making dad jokes debate, so it'll be great. That's going to be good. Do you want to hear a dad joke? I think I got some. Why don't bicycles stay up late at night? Because they're too tired. But then, what else do we have to think about tonight? Apparently, it's World War III again. We're having another World War III. So if you haven't noticed, we are actually, in fact, having another World War III. So that's fun. Too tired. Yeah. Straight to jail. Oh, I got more. I'll hit you with some more later. Let's look at this, and then we'll go over here to turn off the game capture, turn on the window capture, and then we'll go over here. We're getting ready for the debate up here, so that's up there. But in the meantime, we have about 26 minutes to go. What I can do, actually, and what I'd like to do, is hop over there. And let's look at Iran shooting some missiles at Israel. You know, World War III again. In case you weren't ready, in case you didn't get enough World War III last time. We got some more World War III. Here they come. World War III incoming. There it is. Those are missiles from Iran. I could swap over here in just a minute. But this is a big deal. Look at all that. Oh my God. The stars are falling. They're coming down. And you see a couple of hit here in just a sec. Yeah, right there. Kapow, kapow, kapow. Yeah, they're coming down. Now some of these got shot down, but some of them did not. And yeah, so Iran is shooting at Israel again, and that's not good. This will not be a good thing. This will only be a bad thing. I kind of wish both of them would knock it off. Pow, another one over there. Yeah, yeah. Even if they do shoot them, sometimes the metal and stuff falls down, but they don't explode. Hopefully. See, there was one that one just exploded. Interceptor missile going up. Yeah, not good, not fun. World War III again, ready to roll. Whenever you are, let's go. Some more World War III. We enjoyed it so much last time, we'll do it again. So yeah, those are getting blown up as well. Yeah, those are getting damaged on the way in. Okay, so let's set that to the side. and hop over here to C-SPAN. So we'll. Sorry, I just finished dinner, so I got a lot of crud in my throat. Let's see if we can get some call-ins and see what's going on over here on the C-SPAN.
But I'm also an American, and what I'm really wanting to hear is, instead of polarizing, combative attitudes, I'm really wanting to hear. Sorry, my cats were playing. I'm really wanting to hear. They're so goofy. I'm really wanting to hear sincerity, and I want to hear both candidates speak, understanding now if they take on the role as a vice president, they are taking on an enormous responsibility, trusted by the American people, to keep us safe from wars, to work on our economy, to keep it right, to keep government out of people's personal business, and just do their job. And it just seems like election after election, the polarization is getting so bad. It's almost like the American people are,
true.
the children
She's
of
a
divorced
childless
parents.
cat lady.
You just got them both fighting, and we're the ones paying for it. So I really want to hear sincerity, and I certainly want to hear specific plans on what they're going to do to make our lives better. I want them to remember that they actually work for us because taxpayers pay their check.
How's the volume on the lady there?
Deploy over this latest thing with Iran. And for a free country, we just don't feel very free.
All right. Shirley in Tennessee. Cynthia in Seattle, Democratic caller.
Oh, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I would like to hear the candidates speak about civil liberties. The First Amendment and our right to privacy are very important to me, and I would like to hear them address that. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, Cynthia, thanks for calling in. More calls coming up. But first, we want to hear from David Dwight, who is the Ohio Capitol Journal editor, to talk about Senator J.D. Vance. David Dwight, tell us about J.D. Vance. He's a one-term senator from Ohio.
No, don't.
But this is his, first appearance on a national
He's weird.
stage.
Just say that,
other
and then
than
back to you. He's
his
weird.
acceptance
Back to you.
speech for the vice presidential ticket.
Yeah, so he was first elected to the U.S. Senate representing Ohio in 2022. So he's pretty new both to having any elected position whatsoever, as well as the national stage, as you point out. We have seen
That's
him
not
in a
me.
couple
That's
days
them.
of debates before for the U.S. Senate campaign when
With
he
the
was
audio.
campaigning
Leftist
against
audio.
U.S. Congressman Tim Ryan.
Terrible.
He likes to debate. He tends to remain fairly calm.
The people must know. Yeah.
I wouldn't expect a lot of fireworks or big emotional reactions
an important
from
question.
him, but he does do the back and forth debate pretty well. It should be an interesting night to see how he performs. He's been
practicing on 4chan for
he's
years.
been getting
He's ready.
fact-checked a lot lately, so it'll be interesting to see whether he leans in on some of those assertions that he's made, for instance, about Springfield, Ohio, or whether he backs off of it if and when it comes up tonight.
How
it'll
has
come up.
J.D. Vance, if at all, changed over the years from before a senator to being a senator and now as the vice presidential nominee on the Republican ticket?
Well, he famously
lashes before.
started as the memoirist who wrote about Appalachia and poor
He figured it
industrial
out.
cities
He
here
got
in
the
the
secret.
Midwest.
Maybe
and
it's Maybelline.
He was a never Trumper at that point. He called Trump the opioid of the masses, and in private texts, he called him America's Hitler and stuff. So he was very anti-Trump. And by the time he was running for Senate in 2022, he had transformed himself into very much a Trump supporter. It was Trump's endorsement that really put him over the edge in a competitive primary for the 2022 election to the general in that sense. And
why would he flip-flop on that? Because Later, he found out that Donald Trump could benefit him. So he doesn't like Donald Trump, but Donald Trump could benefit him if he just plays along. So that's what he's done. He has no ethics. He has no values. He has no principles. If you can get him across the finish line, he will say whatever you want him to.
Because we're in the middle of a manufacturing boom right now that's happened during the Biden-Harris administration. But if Vance's typical campaign trail rhetoric is any indication, then he's going to say that there needs to be much more happening. I don't even know if he'll acknowledge the manufacturing construction that's happening right now, but he'll probably make a populist case pleading toward the industrial heartland that's been hit hardest by over the last 30 years or so.
Industrial jobs are never coming back. Industrial jobs are gone and they are not coming back. Don't look backward. Republicans, they are the backward-facing party.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
And back to the conversation with all of you. Brandon in El Paso, Texas, independent. Brandon,
let's hear.
What do you want to hear from the candidates?
I just want to sum up my ideas in one quick sentence. I just want my trans neighbors to be able to defend their marijuana plants with a fully automatic AR-15 if they want to. I think the Second Amendment conversation has not been had, and my possible vote for Harris is more of a protest vote for Trump. Regardless, neither of them really stand for 2A rights as much as I would like them to. That said, one thing that would help me vote for Harris more would be if she flopped back to whatever stance she has allowing for 2A rights and actually meant it. It's a shame that I have to pay $200 a tax stamp just for a safety device like a silencer. So those kinds of things are things that are
the safety device like a silencer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sylvia in San Jose,
very
California.
important that he has that safety device.
Good evening, Sylvia.
Hi. I'm so excited. I am voting for Vice President Harris and her nominee for Vice President. And I have really strong convictions. I was born and raised in California. And over the few years that she's been vice president and so forth and so on, I've had people tell me from both sides, but I feel like I know her, and she's a Christian. I truly believe that her and her candidate for vice president are perfect.
You were happy with her pick then, choosing the Minnesota governor.
Yes,
yeah,
I am.
the normies
What does
love
he bring
Walz.
to the
They're
table?
eating him up. They love him.
He's down to earth.
See?
He is very sincere. She's also very sincere. And I was raised very poorly, but we had a roof over our head. We had food on the table. My dad was a steady worker.
She does. She's talking about
hard worker,
how much she likes him.
And my mom was as well. And all I can say is that I really believe in the two of them, and I feel it's a better thing for the United States. Trump and his nominee for vice president. I'm so put off.
Okay, Sylvia, I'm going to move on and get Eli in, who's in Vickery, Ohio, Republican.
The fact checking, not a surprise.
Hi, I'm a 19-year-old college student from Ohio, and I'm a Republican. I'm a Reagan and Bush Republican, and I'd like to get back to those
Reagan
days.
and Bush Republican.
I'm very concerned with
You're
our
19
vice
years
presidential
old.
nominee, Senator Vance. I'm an Ohioan. I personally don't love him.
Why not?
I'm more concerned about his foreign policy. I don't know if you saw today, but Iran striked against Israel, and Vance has kind of shown a very shaky stance in standing against foreign dictators like Iran and Russia, and I think that's very concerning. So I'd love him to kind of reassure the American people of our job to defend democracy globally.
Yeah, Eli, we talked about it, at the top here of the hour when we started this evening. Do you think that that issue needs to be addressed right away by the moderators? The first question, which is the intensifying situation in the Middle East.
100%.
That's fine.
It's very scary what's going on.
As for the fact checking, not a surprise. Reporters are wieners who don't want to call out people when they are lying. It's very easy to do with Donald Trump because he says such wild, crazy things. It's a little bit harder to do with J.D. Vance. He's a little bit better at debating and a little bit better at talking. Bobbert, thanks for coming in.
The owners of the Federal Reserve Bank that control this country have always controlled
Federal
this country
Reserve.
and always will as long as the banking system is not in the hands of the government.
All righty. Earlier, we heard
They
from
don't do if you
Democratic Governor
start talking about the
J.B.
Federal Reserve
Pritzker.
too
He
much.
was in the spin room in New York City, the spin room there on your screen. We've been showing you it all evening, and he was talking in support of the Harris-Walz ticket. Jason Miller, who is a Trump campaign senior advisor, spoke to the cameras earlier this evening, and here's what he had to say.
It's important. People are voting, and especially in a lot of these battleground states, people are voting. And also the other thing, too, we see, look at what's going on in the world right now. Look at Iran with their attack on Israel, obviously having the Hezbollah and continued chaos with Hamas. You look at what China's doing with making noise against Taiwan. You look at the chaos at our southern border.
Well, in actual cloud, they think that not calling one side or the other a liar puts them in the center, and it doesn't. They are supposed to provide us with true things and label them as true things, then provide us also with opinion and label those as opinion. But by not calling out one side's lies, they think that things are meeting in the middle. It's almost like they're giving too much weight. I think they're giving too much weight to the lies that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump say, as if it's two sides against each other. Well, this happens on climate change all the time as well. So if they have 99% of climatologists agree, what will the news have? The news will have one climatologist who says that climate change is real and one climatologist who says it's not. But that first guy has 99% of the other climatologists on his side. It's not 50-50. It's not a coin toss. It's 99-1. That's just the bad way that some news organizations operate, because they want to be fair and in the middle and nonpartisan. That doesn't mean you allow people to lie all the time. I get the rationale. I just can't believe they won't fact check. Yeah, because they're worried that it happens too often to one side, and then they seem like they're picking sides, but it happens to one side because the one side lies more often than the other. That's all there is to it. Donald Trump got fact-checked 4 times during the last debate because he lied a lot. A coworker had his voter registration wiped today. He had to re-register 35 days. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're playing that game. I checked mine last week, but I'm in a blue state, so they're not dumping people left and right.
Program here on C-SPAN following the debate. We will pick up here and take more of your phone calls, of course, have a conversation with you, get your reaction to the debate, and then hear from their supporters as well. Michael in Jacksonville, Florida, Democratic caller.
All right, Michael,
what do you want to hear tonight?
Yeah, I want to hear 2 main things. I want to hear Walz address how him and Harris are going to keep Trump from joining the White House, since this is a traitor to the United States who tried to subvert democracy by submitting fraudulent slate of electors from 7 states. And from J.D. Vance, I would like to hear from him, if the former president tries to do this again, will he have the same spine that Vice President Mike Pence did and stood up for the American?
Oh, J.D. Vance already said in an interview that he would have tossed the 2020 election back to the states and not certified the way Pence did. So we already know the answer to that one.
Things that I'd like to hear from tonight. I'd like to hear clarifying comments about Springfield, Ohio, and what's going on there, because J.D. Vance has been there. I would also like to hear more about abortion, and considering what Harris said about Pence, I would like to hear clarifying comments on his.
Nobody can ever hear any more about those things. The 2 issues that will never get stopped talking about, abortion in Springfield, Ohio.
Nick in Moorhead, Minnesota, Democratic caller. Hi, Nick.
Hi, I'm a Minnesota resident, and
the one thing is not to fact check. Well, they're not going to be doing fact check live. They're not going to have the moderator of this debate fact check one person or the other. They're going to do it afterward. They're going to talk about it later, but I mean, the damage is already kind of done. Yeah, Vance would do what's best for Vance. Yeah, absolutely. Are you a few minutes behind, Shinsinto? Not to questioning your life choices, but.
But bottom line is he's been a fantastic governor. I think he'll be a great vice president. Minnesota's already given the country 2 vice presidents in Hubert Humphrey and Walter Mondale, and Tim Walz will be an incredible addition to that list.
Nick, what do you think he brings to the ticket?
I mean, he's just a really down-to-earth guy. I mean, I know plenty of guys in Minnesota who are just like Tim Walz. I would be happy with any of them as vice president, and I'm happy that Tim Walz has a good shot at being them.
Do you want him to remain progressive and push progressive initiatives, or do you see a need for him and the vice president to come to the center?
I mean, Tim Walz he's always been a moderate. I mean, he won in a red district in southern Minnesota. And I think it's a misnomer when progressive policy issues are just policy issues that help ordinary people. So if progressive is helping ordinary Americans, then I'd love for them to be progressive.
Okay. John, Branson, Missouri, Republican. John, let's hear from you.
Hey, thanks for taking the call. I'd just like to get what they're talking about, what they're going to do with the border crisis, our economy, and the abortions topic, and that's about it.
Okay. John in Missouri, we
they
are
only
just
have
a few
2
minutes
issues
out
over
here.
there
Jim,
on the right: abortion and the border. That's all they got.
Pendant. Jim, this debate will get underway at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And what do you want to hear? Jim, you there? An independent in Washington, D.C.
Oh, no.
All right, let me move
He's
on
speaking
to
into
Blaine,
the wrong
who's in
microphone.
Arlington Heights, Illinois.
Leftist
Democratic
audio.
caller.
I want to hear all about the foreign policy, what their stance is on Ukraine. Are we going to reinforce NATO or side with Russia? I want to know what's going on, of course, in the Middle East as well. And back to foreign policies, abortion, union rights, the rights of workers. What are they going to do to defend the middle class and the contrast between the two?
Yeah, you're right,
All
Shinsinto.
right. Blaine's thoughts. Craig is
But I
in
don't think
Northport,
Walz is a
Florida,
moderate,
Republican.
honestly.
Craig, go ahead.
Hello. I'd like to hear on tonight's debate some clarification on the migration acts, the temporary migration acts, and what's going to be done to curb the illegal immigration. I'd also
He brings
like
the dignity.
to
He's not an
see
evil freak.
if
Posted that
Senator
GOP versus
Walz
candidate. Yeah, VP candidate. Yeah,
can talk about the economy.
Absolutely
and
right.
not just give us a story about the middle class. Thank you.
So, Craig, you're a Republican. Do you know how you're going to vote in November?
Oh, absolutely. I am voting Republican this year.
Okay. And what is the number one issue for you that you're going to vote Republican?
The number one issue is illegal immigration and the economy. So 2 big issues, honestly.
Okay. And why do you think the former president will do a better job on those 2 issues?
Well, he was already in office for 4 years, and he proved that he can keep a stable economy, and we actually had some great progress with the economy under Trump. So
we did.
I think that's why I'm voting for him.
And how do you think J.D. Vance helps the ticket on issues like that?
Well, I think he's a down-to-earth, grassroots-esque candidate who can relate to the middle class and the middle upper class.
Oh.
And so I think that's how he bridges
J.D.
the gap.
Vance, grassroots
Eric
realism.
in Bridgeville, Pennsylvania, Democratic caller.
He doesn't
Hi,
know
Eric.
what those words mean.
Hello. Yes, my main question is, where is the common decency gone in this country? When J.D. Vance gets on a podium and talks about his own constituents saying that they're eating cats and dogs, where's the sense of society? Where's the sense of common decency in this country gone? Folks, this is unreal. How has it gotten this far? I don't know. The megalomania that J.D. has displayed, if you look at what he said just a few years ago, what he says now, it's truly terrifying. So that's what I hope Tim Walz asks about. Where's the sense of decency? Thank you.
All right, Eric there in Pennsylvania. We'll go to the senator's home state. Rick is in Dayton, Ohio, independent. Hi, Rick.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
My main concern is health care and why medical bankruptcy is unique American when every other country in the world offers guaranteed health care to their citizens. And I would love to hear both candidates discuss that, how it's going to be resolved, because so many people, as they enter near retirement and beyond, they save their...
I mean, Tim Walz is a bit more progressive on that. I think he would support Medicare for all, honestly.
And why people have to choose between death and bankruptcy.
Capitalism,
when it comes to our health system, I think it's horrible. So that needs to be addressed.
All right, Rick wants to hear about health care tonight. Brandon in Indiana, Republican. Brandon, what do you want to hear about?
I want to hear why Tim, they call him Tampon Tim, why he wants to put tampons in boys' bathrooms and little boys' bathrooms, little kids. And
He wants to put them in all the bathrooms.
I have it,
Get it straight from Indiana. He wants to put them in all the ones. All of them.
All right, Jason in Earlysville,
And then they booed him
Virginia,
out.
Democratic caller. Jason, let's hear from you.
Hey, what's up, Greta? So good hearing from you. I'd like to hear, I like the comment the guy made before, some decency, just remembering that kids are watching. And I also
There are no kids
think
watching.
that Walz is going to kind of do real well by reminding people that the Republicans need to stay out of everybody's business.
Okay, Joins in Petal, Mississippi, independent. Jones is Jones or Joins in Mississippi?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. So I just wanted to, as what a few other callers said, it's just the decency. I know who I'll be supporting. I'll be supporting former President Trump, but just the lack of decency and the fact that politicians continue to stick to issues that divide us and not the issues that the majority of Americans agree on.
So, caller, who has?
The
where
Republicans
is the
are
lack
the ones
of
that
decency
divide us.
coming from? Do you think?
Yeah.
It's coming from both sides.
No.
After the assassination
Sorry,
attempt,
boss.
Trump called Kamala wicked, and Kamala was attacking Trump. I assumed there was going to be some sort of downplaying the rhetoric, like people said, but it was honestly the total opposite, and now we have such division.
So you don't want to hear that tonight from J.D. Vance or Tim Walz?
Not at all. I think it's disgraceful, the lack of decency that frankly both sides have.
All right, Stephanie in Arnold, Maryland, Democratic caller. Stephanie, what do you want to hear? Real quick.
Well, I'd like to hear Mr. Walz talk about decency and the lack of it on the Republican side, because we know from pretty much his adolescence, Mr. Trump has not been particularly decent to anybody.
Ever.
He was
His
prosecuted
entire
as a
life.
slumlord. He's bankrupted several companies, not personal bankruptcy, but several businesses. He's known for not paying contractors, middle America. You want to work for a man who won't pay you, a rich man who won't pay you. As far as the economy,
Yeah, the other day he mentioned that he doesn't pay people overtime, even if they've earned it.
All right, Stephanie, I will leave it there because we are now just moments away from tonight's simulcast of the CBS News.
So yeah, thanks everybody for being here. Very fun time. Hop into chat. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're feeling. If you've got, if you're in Kick Chat or Twitch Chat, you can do a exclamation TTS to have the lovely lady Canooch read your stuff out loud.
Canooch.
There she is. How wonderful. Or if you're on, you can hop into the
Hi, Mom.
Discord. Hi, Mom. There you go. Can hop into the Discord. Tell us what you're thinking. Leave links and stuff like that. Or you can go to the YouTube page and become a subscriber there. Follow all that fun stuff. What is it? It's smash the subscribe button, fondle the bell icon, break the thumbs up, and take a knife into the comment section, because it's dangerous. So, and they're just getting started there. They're showing all the fun stuff and the very cool news, music, and graphics. Look at all those expensive graphics. Look at all those graphics. You got to practice. I know I'm bad at that because I forget what they're
from
called.
CBS News headquarters in New York, America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate, who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East.
That sounds exciting.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she
now he's just going to tell us about himself.
Struggled with
the Iranians are eating the dogs. It's true.
I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that
he's
Donald
good at
Trump
this. He's a
is
little
fickle.
nervous, but
he
he's
will
very
go
good at
to
this.
whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate.
Why would they
Donald Trump
make a deal with us?
Consistently made the world
if Trump wins
more
again, he'll
secure.
undo
Now,
the
we
deal
talk
that
about
Joe Biden does.
The sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up.
Even if
when
Joe
did
Biden
Iran
went
and
out of his way,
Hamas and their proxies attack Israel?
Even if Joe Biden went out of his way to build something new, Trump would undo it again.
Tweets. But effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we had a lot
because we already had like 5 of them going.
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance,
Longer.
according to CBS News polling,
Uncut.
7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today, actually, a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America, because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
The government's going to do that.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got
regulation,
close to an agreement
which
because all
cuts
those
regulation.
things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there.
Regulation left and right, and then they say that the only thing that can save us is government regulation.
Co-chair of the Council of Governors, as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax, and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in.
He did say that.
What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota.
Republicans hate solar.
My farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look,
it's that kind of stuff right there, Robert, that I think he's doing well on.
Topsoil from erosion from these massive storms.
He's talking about farmers for the second time.
And thinking about
the
how do we
like
respond to that, we're thinking
is Vance a better debater?
And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Hey, it was almost a fact check.
We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who's struggling with opioid addiction and has gotten clean.
Immigrants.
I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies,
the Americans are making.
Build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 20, 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
The Dems have tried to fix it.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things, regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio. But there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen.
It was a Republican bill.
Crafted by conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done.
Right,
Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said,
why didn't you do it 4 years
Kamala
earlier?
Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at.
And then
pass
he
the
hits him
bill,
again, yeah.
she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace. And it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now, now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Lankford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
I'll be your friend. Just turn on Donald Trump.
Tim, Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action,
like a dictator.
solve this? Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield.
Yes.
Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed.
No,
you've
they're
got
not.
housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans.
The price went up
for
because
scarce
they're
homes. The
paying
people that
the
I'm
rent
most worried
on
about
time.
in Springfield,
That
Ohio,
makes the
are the
stuff more
American
valuable.
citizens
That means the
who have had
companies
their
raise
lives
their
destroyed by
prices.
Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with.
And how do the Haitians, did they take over the real estate market? Did they roll in there and buy all the houses and then jack all the prices up? No. Was it a company that owns those houses that wants more money? Yes. Capitalism is the problem.
It takes 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply
got some more
want order to
normies.
it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Margaret,
is he going to argue?
Senator, we
no,
have so
they're
much
saying
to
they're
get
moving
to.
on.
I think it's important.
They're moving on.
Margaret, the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to
'Cause you're
say
a
what's
liar.
actually going on. So
You're a
there's an
liar.
application called the CBP One app,
From Haiti.
where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for
That's
a green
a
card and
legal
waiting for 10
status.
years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the
And
legal
Com-
process.
and
Thank
We
you
have
for
so
describing
much
the
to
legal
get to,
process.
Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to have.
One app has not been on the
He
books.
just doesn't like it. If you don't like it, tell us you don't like it. They
Gentlemen,
muted him.
The audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you for describing the legal
economy
process.
is a top concern for voters. Each
Damn.
of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by a third. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, he said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in.
He's talking about class.
Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies.
Did it already?
And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans.
How are the poor people coming across the border making things more expensive?
For how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense, and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that.
They were wrong
about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to
being
say
honest,
to that
anti-expert.
bipartisan consensus,
Don't listen to
we're
what
not
people
doing
say.
it anymore. We're bringing American
believe what you
manufacturing
want.
back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up.
Common
Governor Walz,
sense
can you
is
address that?
just a
voters say they
buzzword
trust
that means
Donald
their
Trump on the
feelings.
economy.
Common
more.
sense
Why?
is just what
if
they
you're listening
feel.
tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
He's doing good.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job
Don't listen to experts.
You've
Just
got
listen to
play
your
whack-a-mole.
gut,
You've got to
your
pretend that
feels.
Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I
That's a
know
flaw
what it's
of
like
capitalism.
to not be able to afford the things that you
Not
need
the
to afford.
government.
We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress.
The normal voter abandons him.
And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people.
Vance lies
working on
100
things like
times.
Farm bills that we got done,
and
working on veterans benefits.
Never loses a vote.
And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect
Tim
me to
Walz
governor
exaggerates
twice.
about something that happened in 1989, and they don't win
from the
anymore.
beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier, or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
The right wing loves it when you lie.
To follow up on that,
and J.D. Vance is going to lie his ass off in the next fucking 5 minutes.
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will
He
just...
misspoke? Oh, God, see?
That's what I've
now
said.
We can't vote for him, you know?
So
he
I was
misspoke.
in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
He misspoke in 1989.
Thank you, Governor.
J.D. Vance is going to lie about
Senator
10
Vance,
times in the next 5 minutes.
In 2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit for the nation's highest office,
And he's
and
gonna
you said
yell
he
at
could
Walz.
be America's
That's what he's
Hitler.
going to do. He's going to dodge this question.
I know you've said,
and
you've
yell
been
at
asked
Walz
many
and call him a
times, and
liar.
you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with
But
his.
he won't care. The right
if
wing
you
won't
become
care.
vice
The
president,
people who want him to win
why should
don't
Americans
care if he's a
trust
liar.
that you will
They
give
like
Donald
it. They
Trump
love
the
it.
advice
They want
he needs
those
to hear,
lies
and not just the
because
advice
it makes them feel
he
good.
wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent.
Right, that wasn't very long
I think
ago.
there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump
flip-flopping
administration
from
in the first
2020, and they had to go back to
if Congress was doing
1989 to
its
find the
job.
last time
I strongly
Tim Walz
believe, and I've been a
lied.
United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers.
That's the
unless
capitalist
our country
companies,
stands
not the
up for
governments.
itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
That's
Senator,
a regulation.
your
That's a
time is
gigantic
up.
regulation.
Nora?
Put on
Thank you.
hundreds of
now
companies.
to the issue of reproductive rights.
And-
Governor
and
Walz,
he'll
after Roe
just keep
versus
saying
Wade
it.
was overturned,
And then when he's
you
in charge,
signed
he'll never put in a
bill into
regulation.
law
God, no.
that made
They hate
Minnesota one of
regulation.
the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen
human rights,
maternal mortality
you shouldn't have a different right if you
in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women. We trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring
agency? He did a good
agency?
job on that answer. Roxanne.
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options.
He knew a lot of
And, you know,
like
one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
I think your party is the one that's making it messy and divided, JD.
Yeah,
you
well,
are.
The question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you
his
about
party
this
fucked up on
idea
the
that
issue,
there's
yes.
diverse states.
But he's
There's
trying
a young woman
to
named Amber
do a
Thurman.
little mea culpa.
She happened to be
Hey,
in Georgia,
this sucks.
a restrictive state.
But it's
because
okay.
of that, she had to travel
trust
a
us.
long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice
If she
President
lived in a
Harris
blue
talk
state, she'd
about
be
this
alive
subject, and
today.
you hear me talk about it,
That's
you
a
hear us
good
talking
argument.
exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is
If
up.
she lived
Senator,
in a blue
let me
state,
ask
she'd be
you
alive.
about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, Why have you changed your position?
Because
Well,
he
Nora,
doesn't care.
First of all, I
he
never
doesn't have any
supported a
principles.
national
That's why he
ban.
changes his
I
position.
did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationship.
We're going to do nothing to change it. We're going to do nothing to make it better.
Trust back.
Trust us.
And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making child care more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience.
While those in chat,
we can
no Catholic
be a
hospitals.
big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Okay, so yeah, Tim Walz is nervous. He is, he's got his nerves going. This is the biggest, probably the most important thing of his life so far, honestly. And they did look weird there, didn't they? And so I think he's doing good. He's not doing bad. He's not doing great, but he is saying truthful things. He is saying the things that make more sense. And I think he's going to be a hit with the normies in the middle. He's speaking like a normal person. He's not using leftist terms like I do, like bourgeois and class reductionism and capitalist class and stuff like that. So he's doing a little bit better job there. Are we halfway through this thing? Well, we're about 30 minutes into it. So there's another hour. I think he's got to get mad, show people who he is. Maybe. He was getting a little flustered there with the thing about the law. He's like, just like, yeah, that's not how the law is written, man. Like, how do I prove that to you? So I think he was a little bit he was on it right there. He was starting to get a little flustered with that, saying that's just not how the law is written. Well, prove to me that's not how the law is written. Nobody can prove a negative. Prove to me there's not a law that says there are no unicorns. It doesn't work. But I think he's doing well. I think that the people in the middle are going to like him. He's really good on the campaign trail. This debate is going to get some views that of regular voters. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of people who are undecided. I don't think there are quite that many undecided people. Either you know who you're going to vote for or you're not paying attention, generally, especially this year. Either you know who you're voting for or you don't care because you don't watch, which means you're not watching this. If he said, you're full of shit, what more do you want from me? I think it would have done wonders for him. Well, maybe, yeah. He would get kicked off of the Dems, though. The Dems wouldn't accept that. Nancy Pelosi would have a fit. She would faint and then remove him from his position and suggest that was a mistake and that you can't ever let a progressive on ever again. So I know what you're saying, and I know why and how it would be good. Pearl clutching intensifies. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I think that's what she would do. As for the Catholic hospitals, no more Catholic hospitals. How about that? How about that? No more Catholic hospitals. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart. God, no. They're not doing that because they think that they need to provide for the people. They're doing it so they can control you. It's exactly why the Catholic hospitals even exist. They don't like certain medical procedures, so they just tried to get the judges to shoot that shit down. Then they tried to get the legislators to shoot that shit down, and they wouldn't, so they just started running hospitals. And they have the entire Catholic Church money to back them up. One, it turns a profit for them, and then two, they get to deny certain types of health care. And if all the hospitals in the country were Catholic, they would feel even better about it, and no one would ever get abortions or birth control because the Catholics are in charge. This is power. This isn't healthcare. This isn't charity. This isn't them helping you out. Power is what it's about, and who gets to wield it. So I don't like that. That's why I don't like Catholic hospitals. No more Catholic hospitals. None. Get rid of them. I would pass a law and I would support the Democrat who pushes that law. Hey, no more Catholic hospitals. No more religious hospitals of any religion. No more. It's insane and there's no reason for it to exist. I think we're about to get back on. We're watching patiently. Oh, no, we're gonna cut to the building again. There we go. All right, start the audio. Here we go.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms.
There's more debate. Yeah,
Senator
I know. Ew,
Vance,
gross.
You oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous.
No, Walz is going to do fine. He's going to push that he's a hunter.
Father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff.
About it?
And we do have to do better. And I think that
like
Governor
what?
Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is
like
just
what?
how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence.
What are you going to do if you're in charge of the government?
The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools?
He's
what
only
do we
got
do to
one
protect
trick.
our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that worked. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go?
That was him, not me.
We know
that was
there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing
either one
these
of them
types of drills.
had a
They're being
stomach
kids.
movement.
We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay.
The Walz was
Christ
speaking,
have
so I don't think he could do a big gulp while he
awful.
was speaking.
And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay. First of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety.
I'm going to blame all that on capitalism as well.
We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think in our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where My shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at.
Friends with school
the
shooters?
Number one,
yeah, afterward,
where
I
the
suppose.
most
Maybe.
firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are
he's
rural
friends with people who
suicides. And we have an epidemic
shot
of
at school?
children
I'm not
getting
sure what
guns
it is.
and shooting themselves.
I'm not sure.
And so we have, and we
Maybe he's
should look at all of the
met
issues.
them in prison. I don't know.
Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Roger, there are so many school shooters in the country that
Let's turn
statistically
now to the
you
top
are friends with
contributor
one.
to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first
More
let me say
houses
this,
means
this
lower
issue
prices.
of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've
Increased
had
supply.
is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity.
Lowers the price.
It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight,
Companies.
that house is a big deal. I
Giant
bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that.
I'm trying to catch the doggy, but he's running away.
We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back.
I'm trying to keep you, but
and
he's
you're going to
running
pay your
from me.
mortgage. Those are things
He's
that we
on-
know
he's
in the
caught on to
long
me.
run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in. And we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief?
Immigration could raise the
First
price.
of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up
immigrants.
costs.
Blame Kamala for letting them in.
25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American
presidents don't
of
write
homeownership
bills.
completely unaffordable.
They never have,
Now, you asked,
except for the
Margaret, what would
Republicans.
immediately
Maybe they
change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says,
No,
drill,
baby,
baby,
it's not
drill.
what they do.
One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods, too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where? Yeah.
Can I have it?
Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up.
Bobert's got an
I do
idea
want to
there.
let you respond to
If
the
we become
allegation
a
that the Vice President is
dictatorship, the prices might go down.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land.
We're going to drill
now,
and
Minnesota
build the houses
doesn't have
in the
a
same
lot of
place.
federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do.
We have to
There's
drill
not
first, take
a
all the
lot
oil
of
out,
federal
and then you
lands
put the
in
house
and
on
around
top.
Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that.
Capitalism.
I think there's better ways to do this.
He's
We've seen it in
anti-capitalist,
Minnesota. We're
man.
able
He's
to
just hiding
refurbish some
it.
of these houses.
So
We're able to make
cool.
some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate.
I agree
We'll put
about
it
it.
up
I
on
don't want
social
them to be
media, actually, that
commodities. They are, but they
really
shouldn't
drills
be.
down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris.
He hates
we are a
regulation,
country of builders.
but he
we're
wants
a
to be in
country
charge
of
of the
doers.
government.
We're a
What's
country
the
of
government gonna do?
explorers. But we increasingly have a
Regulations.
federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as
Bobbert,
Kamala
and he's
Harris
hiding
says they
it.
have to do.
Giving
And
it
what
you
that
baby
means
steps,
is
just
you have
a
a
little
lot
bit
of
at a
people
time.
who would love to
I'm
build
a
homes who
leftist. I'm
aren't able to build
anti-capitalist.
homes.
I know what
actually
he's
agree with
saying,
Tim Walz.
and I know
We
where
should
it
get out of
leads.
this idea of housing as a commodity. But
So
the
I'm excited.
thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
Giving it away.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
Come here illegally and you just get a free house.
I'm sorry.
It's amazing.
I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to
Illegal
get to. You're
aliens are
passionate about the
jacking up
housing
your price.
crisis. I can tell.
your costs.
But Nora?
Thank you.
Having
One
a
of the
higher
top
population
problems facing
will raise your
Americans is the high
housing
cost of
costs.
health care.
So
Senator
them
Vance,
being, I'm not saying
at the
just
last
illegal
presidential
immigration,
debate,
but just
former President
them
Trump
being
was
more
asked
people.
about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, I have concepts of a plan. Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that
that's a bad
a lot
thing.
of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan.
You know how Texas would do that experiment?
Some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along.
Obamacare was on its last legs, and then Donald Trump saved
it. With everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care.
What planet does this guy live on?
It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
Madness.
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris,
he gets in trouble for that.
More people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to
repeal and replace.
Obamacare.
That's what he said.
On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is...
So you think the individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America.
Donald Trump tried to kill the ACA.
There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress works. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that.
The Republicans
so Kamala Harris has made it a
families, but they
priority.
don't
We
support
implemented
paid
it in
family
Minnesota,
leave.
and we see growth. That's
Let's
how
see
you
if he has
become
anything to say to this.
A pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue: those big companies
Maybe he'll bring
are
it back
able
to
offer
immigrants.
it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that
we all
means
had the
no
same
paycheck
idea.
because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our family, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Make it easier to have
Governor,
children.
your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. but being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily
Can you talk
difficult.
about government policy,
and it's not
please?
just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company, but the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal
Donald Trump doesn't want any of those things. He won't even pay people overtime if they earned it.
The Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families.
When your boss tells you need to be back at work tomorrow, that's not an option.
Senator, thank you.
He said nothing.
You have also said, Senator Vance,
I'm pro-family. No, you can't have family
American
leave.
Family. The Federal Reserve says
we love families. No, you can't make your own choices.
Will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit.
What he said was nonsense.
That we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal.
That they won't do.
What President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Unless the company decides not to do that because it saves them a buck.
Child care shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator.
Capitalism is why it's expensive right now.
Your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
You actually have to dig in and comprehend what he's talking about.
If these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud.
She's looking right at him.
Of every state in the
She's
nation,
eyeballing him.
Republicans and Democrats certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress.
Now, J.D. Vance said he would have sent them back.
Senator
not
Vance,
certified.
you have said you would not have certified
Exactly.
the last presidential election.
Watch him
and would have
flip-flop.
asked the states to submit alternative
Don't be a crazy
electors.
person.
That has been called unconstitutional and illegal.
Unconstitutional
Would you again
illegal.
seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said.
There were problems. He made up those problems.
He said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately,
nothing
we have
else
all
happened.
of the negative policies that have come
Nothing
from
important.
the Harris-Biden administration.
He said, "Be nice."
I believe that
then
we
he
actually
left.
do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to
pay
talk
attention
about. It is the
to
threat
all those
of
people
censorship.
screaming
It's Americans
about Jan 6.
casting
No.
aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens, and it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger
Don't
threat to
censor people
democracy
who
than anything that
doing
we've seen in this
misinformation.
country.
Republicans
in the last
need
4
that
years, in the
misinformation.
last
They
40
need
years.
it.
Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought
RFK
to
Jr.
argue
and
about them. We ought
Tulsi
to try to
Gabbard were
persuade our
watching my
fellow
stream, I would
Americans.
block them.
Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship.
I
at
need
an
the numbers, but
industrial
I don't need them
scale.
that bad.
She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, "We're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties." The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we'll win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help.
We wrecked a whole bunch of stuff and broke into the
But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time.
They didn't say it was stolen. They said it was influenced.
If we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election,
but again,
I'm on
he doesn't
board.
care what's real.
But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, this is just a problem that Republicans have had,
we're watching these two
I don't
guys
buy
talk.
that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history
Good
on
job.
this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that.
Right.
We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That's the headline tomorrow.
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will
How dare you?
outlive this present
Republicans
political
need
moment.
that misinformation,
I would like
damn
Democrats
it.
and Republicans to both reject
How are they going to talk to
censorship.
people?
Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about
How
ideas.
is Fox News even going to survive with that misinformation?
Afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this
I know
I'm pretty
Facebook's
shocked
not
by
a government
this.
entity.
He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So, America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates, the CBS News Vice President.
Okay, so yeah, he doesn't have to be constrained by the realities. It is easier to debate if you don't care about what's true. Vance does come out looking good because he is more experienced at debate. He's been practicing on 4chan for a very long time. He was born on the poll board. And that is where he grew up. Okay. Yes, there's more. It's going to go for another 20 minutes or so. So yeah, it's supposed to be 90 minutes. It started at 6. It's going to be over at about 8:30, 7:30, something like that. I don't remember. So we're probably going to get closing statements and stuff like that. I'm so sick of it, but I can't not watch it. That's the motto of all politics. Should that be the new start, or should that be the banner on my YouTube page? I'm sick of it, but I can't not watch. If somebody turns that into a graphic, I'll put it on the YouTube page. I really will. I'll use it in my videos. I'm so sick of it, but I can't not watch. I could put that as the intro music to the YouTube videos. I wouldn't mind that at all. I'm sick of it, but I can't not watch. So yeah, that is Walz good? Yeah. Is JD Vance slick and smooth and more like a used car salesman? Yes, he is. He actually is. He's actually kind of good at this whole public speaking thing. I'm not, and I know it, but that's why I get to do this. Let's not forget Vance had the most unfavorable ratings out of the 4 candidates. Right. He does have a lot of unfavorable, but that is not from people listening to him speak. It's from watching his clips on Twitch, on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, it's the whole name, or old podcasts and shit like that. Vance was all over podcasts for years, just spouting whatever the hell he wanted to. Because he never really thought he would get this far. He just wants to get the clicks, he wants to get the views, he wants to get the people to pay attention to him. So you do that. I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. When you have a internet personality, you say things to get people to pay attention. So that's what he did. But he's doing it in a dishonest way. I say things that I'm really thinking and I'm really feeling to get attention, and sometimes I hyperbolize or exaggerate to get people paying attention and get a view or something like that, or get somebody to pay attention. That's fine. But I'm telling you what I'm also thinking, what I'm believing, what I always am honest. I'm the most honest person on the internet. But he's not. He doesn't care about that honesty. He did decent in the debate. Yeah, he's doing good. And it's not because he's super smart. It's because he isn't bound by the rules of reality. He is not bound by laws of the cosmos. He is not bound by history or logical thought. A, B, C, D. He is not bound by that. He is not bound by the laws of physics. He is imaginative. He gets to play with the words all he wants. Words are his Play-Doh. And so he just makes a fake Play-Doh statue that says Donald Trump improved Obamacare. Nonsense. Madness. And in no way is it related to reality, but he just gets to say it because that's the system we have. We have a system of people who can say things that are lies. Now, tomorrow morning, there's going to be a bunch of news people like the ones you see on TV and me, myself, telling you that was a lie. Does it matter? Maybe, maybe not. Because again, the people who believe it want to believe it. They want it to be true, and belief is the problem.
CBS News vice presidential debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between them.
His name drop was
better. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage. And then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor
They're
Walz,
finishing up now,
thank
Cloud.
you.
I
Senator
think it
Vance,
actually
your
does.
closing
Optimism
statement.
is a
Well, I
new
want to
thing.
thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother,
We talked about
when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night.
Capitalism.
And because money was often very tight.
Capitalism.
And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy
Thanks to
policies.
capitalism.
I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance,
No fear in
you.
that
And
ending
thank you
statement.
both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until election.
All right. Well, that's the end of that. Okay. So, how did it go? You guys have been chipping in, but feel free to hit me. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're feeling. I think the optimism thing is going to work at this point, at this moment, Cloud. The optimism, I think, is good. We need it. We've been hearing fear-mongering and doom from Donald Trump so often that it's actually nice to hear some optimism from these people. Tim Walz is a happy, silly, cool guy who just wants to tell dad jokes. Not a single dad joke. How about another dad joke? You ready? Let me think. What was the... My friend just announced that he's marrying his. He just got engaged. It's very exciting. He got engaged. Yeah, her name is Rosemary. She's okay, but I don't know what he sees in her. See, I said season. You get it? Rosemary's a season. Okay. Then, so. You like that? Okay. Oh, God, I had another one ready to go when I've forgotten what it was. Okay. All right. You ready? Okay. Where do you send a soldier with no legs? The army. Obviously. I honestly think that Vance did good and maybe better than Walz. I think he does the debate thing better. He didn't say as many actual specifics. Tim Walz did more specifics, but he did it in a rambling, normal speaking fashion that it doesn't sound like a slick politician. J.D. Vance said more vagaries, more generalities, but he did so smoothly, eloquently, and in a really good manner of speaking. He is much better at the debate thing. I don't think and it just depends on what people want from their politician. If you really do want to have a beer with that guy, you don't want to do that with J.D. Vance. You want to do that with Tim Walz. But I don't think that's a good way to organize your thoughts anyway. Who do I want to have a beer with? That's stupid. That's something Republicans did to make it seem like George W. Bush was smarter than he actually is. They're like, hey, he doesn't use big words, so I'd rather hang out with him. How does the non-binary samurai attack their enemy? I don't know, KBP. How does a non-binary samurai attack their enemy? They slash them. Okay, I gotcha. I was like, wait, what? They slash them. Okay. Good job. I like that. That's very nice. So, what the hell was I talking about? Yeah, he's smooth, he's cool, and he seems better on the stump, and he could give a good speech. The things that J.D. Vance is saying, though, once you start investigating them, once you start paying attention, you find out that he's just vaguely pointing at the problems, just vaguely point towards Democrat hypocrisy. That's it. That's all I've got. That's all they ever have. There is no policy plan. He has no plan to make policy better. He does not have an actual plan to make Obamacare better. They will gut it. They will kill it. They will get rid of it. And then they will tell you that they made it better. They will strip every important thing from the ACA and tell you they improved it by removing the regulations. It doesn't do anything anymore. It doesn't exist. It's not there. But he will look you in the eye and say, that's better. Great. Now it's on the market. Isn't that wonderful? Now everybody can make money off of it. Now you can pay for whatever you want. Now you have the ability to buy whatever you want. You can just buy it from the hospital. Why aren't you buying your health care from the hospital, idiot? Because you ain't got no money. And I know I'm a broken record when I complain about capitalism all the time, but he mentioned there at the end, heat that they couldn't afford because they didn't have enough money, housing that's too expensive because they don't have any money, crime, that people do crimes because they don't have a job and they can't feed themselves otherwise and they don't have any money, and fentanyl, which the people take because they're depressed because they don't have any money. That's self-medication is what it is. And then the people who are smuggling it in are Americans who want to get paid because they need money. It's the source of all our issues, and nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to think about it. Nobody wants to do anything about it. We can't do anything about it because we're fish swimming in a capitalist pond. There's nothing we can do. What can a goldfish do about water? Nothing. They live in it. And that is the issue. That is why I like it when Walz starts talking about class. When he mentioned class 2 or 3 times there. That's some secret sneaky Marxism is what that is. That's some sneaky Marxism. He's sneaking that shit in there. He's not using the big words like bourgeoisie or owner class or something like that, or donor class. And he's sneaking it in there. He's just slowly, smoothly putting that Marxism in there. Did he get to that point by reading Das Kapital by Karl Marx? No. He got to it through actually working through the problems, looking at the problems that he has, trying to figure out a good way to fix them, and moving forward. That's how he got there. I think he's an accidental Marxist. I really think he is. But that makes the people on the right hate him. If they actually get hold of the idea that he's talking about class warfare there, they'll stomp on him. And when he does run in 8 years, and he will, that guy's going to run for president in 8 years. He is. Cheered. Thank you. As I cough. He's going to run in 8 years. whether it's with Kamala, Kamala's going to win, get 4 years, and then she's going to run again and get 4 more, and then he'll be the vice president following Kamala, running for president, because that's what vice presidents do. Al Gore was a vice president, and he ran. He lost. George H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr., was a vice president. Kamala, vice president. Again, this is what they do. Mike Pence wanted to run, but he would have been tied to Trump, and Trump is poisonous and awful. And, I mean, Mike Pence still wants to run someday, as soon as this whole Trump thing is over. Regardless, that's what VPs do, is they run for president later. That's great news. I love the idea. Walz AOC. 20, what year would that be? 24 plus, it'll be 32. Walz AOC 32. Damn straight. Damn right. That would be fantastic. And even if Kamala loses 4 years from now, he could still run in 32. It would be the same time, because he won't run against her in 24. That wouldn't make, in 28, that wouldn't make any sense. He's not going to run against her in 28 if she's running again, and she will run again. That's what they always do. So he's not going to run in 28. He's going to be vice president. He might lose, but then he'll come back in 32. And I think he's going to do well. He's got to get a little bit of a practice with the speaking and stuff like that, but that's fine. Accidental Marxist. I think accidentally he would have a lot in common with Marx's ideas, not because he read it and read the theory of communism or anything like that, or even thinks that he's doing communism. He just stumbled into it. This is a good idea. This is what works. Here's what doesn't work. And he ended up on the left, and it's fantastic. He's a left-leaning progressive, and I could not be happier. He is further to the left than Kamala Harris. He is. From the words that he said tonight, whether he knows it or not, whether you know it or not, whether the regular American people know it or not, Tim Walz is further to the left than Kamala. And I'm excited about that. And I think that's a good thing. That's a great thing. I think after, let's look at the number real quick. So I'm not going to go on for much longer, but let's look at the very fun map. It's the map. It's map time. All right, map time. Come on, internet. Go, internet. 270 to win. Oh, yeah, look, KVP's in here gambling again. If you want to be as cool as him, you can go into Kick Chat or Twitch chat and type !slots. And you can gamble too. Good night, Roxer. Appreciate you coming in. Thanks. We're going to reset it. No, we don't want to reset it. Yeah, we do. Okay, we got it. Here's the map. It's the map. All right. Map. There it is. At the moment, they're calling Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania swing states. That's fine. Not a surprise. Nobody's surprised by this. I think all three go blue. Come on, internet. Quit giving me ads and click the buttons. And that puts her over that puts her at exactly 270, you know? I think just those three put her at 270. She's in the lead in those three, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, on the according to the numbers that the people have posted. She's in the lead slightly. That puts her over the top. I think she's going to get Nevada and Arizona both. That puts her way over the top. Georgia and North Carolina are Georgia's going to be chaos. Georgia's going to be a chaotic mess, nightmare of a mess. Even if she doesn't get Arizona, that still puts her 276. Even without Georgia, even without North Carolina, even without Georgia, the chaos capital. Chaos will reign in Georgia with the recent suggestion that they have to hand count all the votes. They just passed that as the law. You have to hand count all of them. That's not going to help. It's not going to make them better. It's not going to make them more accurate. It's going to make them slower and more expensive. And then Donald Trump will lose that one or win. Doesn't matter. He's still under. He still has fewer than her. She's still at 276. And then he's going to say, I demand a recount in Georgia. Well, who cares? You're still under 276. Why would that matter? But that chaos that they created in Georgia will be the reason he goes on TV and says that he didn't lose. Create the chaos and then climb on top of it. That's why I keep saying chaos is a ladder. I know Thomas hates it, but it keeps being true. Create chaos, climb. Then blame everybody else for the chaos and say that you have the solution to chaos, which is actually just more chaos. And then you climb some more. That is Donald Trump's actual plans. Make a mess, climb on top of everybody. When it starts to calm down, make another mess, climb on top of everybody. Climb on top of the bodies, honestly. That's what he's going to do. That's what he wants. So I appreciate everybody who was here tonight. Thank you for coming in. If you want to go and talk about stuff like that, there's the Discord. Please go over there and tell people what you're thinking. Tell me what you're feeling. If you leave cool memes, I will put them up on the start screen. When I go to when I start the show, I have that start screen, and I will put your cool memes there. Go to the Discord, leave a meme, leave something fun or hopefully poignant, topical, and I'll put it up on there. Please go on over to the YouTube link right there. You can watch all the old vids. On the live tab, I have all these things unedited directly on the live tab. But if you just want smaller individual things, I will put specific topics on the video page, and then I edit out all the uhs and the ums and the just like that, and all the empty space. That gave me OBS has failed to function. It's disconnected apparently. OBS is failing on me, so I have to make this quick. OBS is about to collapse. It's going down. It might be restored. I don't know. OBS is digging in my ears. Can you guys hear that? Oh my God, I'm panicking. But at least it's at the end. I appreciate everybody who's here. Thanks very much. Go on over to YouTube. Smash the subscribe button. Molest the bell. Break the thumbs, and stab someone in the comments. That's what happens over on YouTube. It's a violent place. It's a dangerous place. You should be careful when you go over to YouTube. It is dangerous. Other than that, that is it for me tonight. I will be back on Thursday. So we're doing Tuesday night tonight. So Thursday I'll be back again. Thursday night at the regular time, 7 o'clock PST, Best Coast, West Coast. And that is it from me tonight. Thanks for everybody who came by. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I am out of here. That's it. Good night.